They said no one loves a fat girl. But that day, on the edge of the wild prairie, a woman with trembling hands and a heart full of hope whispered something that would change two lonely lives forever. Before I tell you what the rancher said to her, hit that like button if you've ever felt unworthy, unseen, or unloved, because this story might just remind you why you are enough. And don't forget to subscribe, because we tell stories here that heal hearts. Now let's begin. The year was 1887. Dust rose in gentle curls over the plains of Montana as settlers built their lives on land that was wild and unforgiving. Among them was Clara Mayfield, a woman of 28, soft-faced, round, and quiet. Every morning, she'd rise before dawn to fetch water from the creek, her breath fogging in the cold air. Her skirts were always clean, her hair always tied back neatly. But still, she'd hear them whisper, "She's a kind woman, but, you know, a bit too large for any man to want." And each word felt like a needle through her chest. She wasn't ugly, not even close. Her eyes were kind and brown like fresh earth after rain. But kindness, she learned, was never enough. Just 3 miles down the road, Elias Carter ran the Broken Arrow Ranch, a man whose life had hardened like the land he worked. He'd lost his wife to fever 3 winters ago. Since then, his house was silent, his meals were plain, and his heart was closed. The neighbors said he'd forgotten how to smile. He didn't visit town much, except once a month, when he'd ride his black horse to trade cattle feed for flour and sugar. That's when he met her. The morning was cold and gray. Clara was at her little stall in town, selling biscuits, pies, and jars of homemade jam. When Elias stopped by, he was just looking for food. He handed her a few coins, barely glancing up. But when he bit into her apple pie, something changed. His eyes softened for the first time in years. "This is good," he muttered. "Thank you, sir," she replied, her voice shy. "It's just a recipe my mother taught me." He nodded, bought another jar, and left without another word. But as his horse's hooves faded into the distance, Clara whispered to herself, "At least he liked something about me." She didn't know that, a week later, the rancher would come back, just to buy her pie. Over the next months, Elias returned again and again. Sometimes he bought bread, sometimes jam, sometimes nothing at all, just stood there, talking about cattle and weather, while Clara listened quietly. It became their unspoken ritual. But one stormy afternoon, as rain pelted the tin roofs of the town, Clara finally spoke what had been buried in her heart for years. She looked down, her voice trembling like the leaves outside. "No one loves a fat girl, sir," she whispered. Then, trying to smile, she added, "But I can cook?" Elias froze. The sound of the rain filled the silence between them. Then, slowly, very slowly, he stepped closer. "Mom," he said softly, "my wife was thin as a reed, but I still lost her. Love doesn't measure a waistline. It measures warmth. And I think I've been cold for too long." For the first time, she looked up into his eyes and saw not pity, but recognition. Two souls who'd been lonely too long had finally found each other. Weeks turned into months. Clara began visiting the ranch, helping Elias cook and tend the garden. She filled the house with laughter and the smell of cinnamon bread. The ranch that once echoed with emptiness now sang with life. But of course, tongues wagged. "He's gone mad, taking up with her. He just wants her food, not her heart." Clara heard it all, every cruel word, but Elias never wavered. One evening, as the sun bled orange over the hills, he knelt by the old oak tree behind his barn and held her hand. "You gave me back more than food, Clara. You gave me back living." And then, before the wide Montana sky, he said the words she never thought she'd hear. "Will you marry me?" Her answer came through tears and laughter. "Only if you promise to eat everything I cook." He chuckled, a sound no one had heard from him in years, and pulled her close. Years passed. The Broken Arrow Ranch flourished. And when travelers came by, they'd always stop for a slice of Miss Clara's pie. One young woman once asked Elias, "Sir, how did you know she was the one?" He smiled, looking toward the kitchen where Clara hummed as she cooked. "Because," he said, when she said, "No one loves a fat girl." "Sir, but I can cook," I realized she already had the kind of heart you can't find twice. I didn't need a girl who looked perfect. I needed the one who could love perfectly. So if you've ever felt like Clara, unseen, unchosen, or judged by how you look, remember this. The right people will never love you for your body. They'll love you through it, because of it, and beyond it. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there is waiting to taste the kind of love only you can give. If this story touched your heart, please tap that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what real love feels like. Because here, every heart has a home.